This video will go through prehab exercises to help prevent hip injuries. Common hip injuries include hip flexor strains, which are a group of muscles at the front of your hip bursitis, and labral tears. The biggest muscle groups of the hip are the hip flexors, which help to bring the hip forward, the hip extensors, which help to bring the hip back, the hip abductors, which bring the hip away from the body, the hip adductors, which bring the hip back towards the body, the hip external rotators, which rotate the hip away from the body, and the hip internal rotators, which rotate the hip back towards the body. A lot of the muscles between these groups overlap, so it's important to train all muscle groups to make sure that you're reducing your chances of injury correctly. Our next prehab video will focus on the hip, and we're going to start with the hip flexor. This is a group of muscles at the front of your hip, and it's quite common to get strains in this area. A great exercise to do for the hip flexors is a seated hip flexor movement. There's a few different variations on these which I'll show you quickly, and you can do whichever one you prefer. So this one is commonly called a butterfly leg lift, where you have your feet about this far apart. You can spread them apart further if you wish. You're going to have your hands on either side of your leg, and you're just going to lift your foot slowly up into the air and down, and then up and down for about 10 reps or as many as you're able to do. Another variation, which is a bit easier, is when you're hugging one knee into your hip and then the other leg is straight out in front of you, and then you just lift up and down and up and down for about 10 reps. Another variation of this is if you wanted to put something like a yoga block in front of you. You'll sometimes see people coming up, across over the yoga block and down, and then back up, across and down. So ultimately it's up to your own preference. In this video, we're going to show you a glute bridge, which is excellent for strengthening both the glutes, the hamstrings, and the core muscles. So Jennifer is going to start by lying on her back. And what you want to have is your knees bent. You can straighten them out a little bit to make it more difficult, or you can bend them in to make it a bit easier. So start with something relatively easier and then you can make it harder. This is the double leg glute bridge, so both feet are on the floor. Jennifer is going to squeeze her core muscles, and then she's going to slowly lift up her hips as high as is comfortable, and then slowly back down. And you can start off with 10 reps of this and then gradually build it back up. Our next exercise are side lying clamshells, which are great for strengthening the muscles on the outside of the hip. So Jennifer is just going to demonstrate this with us. She's going to start with the easier version, which is without a resistance band. You'll see here she's lying on her side. She has her knees bent up a little bit. Her feet are together, and she's just going to slowly lift up her top knee and slowly bring it back down. If this exercise is too easy for you, you can make it more difficult by adding a band. So you'll see here I have this tied into a loop, and Jennifer is just going to show you if you just pop both of your feet into it, and you're going to leave it just below the knees, and then you're going to repeat the same movement. This will add a little bit of resistance to make the movement harder. Our next exercise is the hip abduction, which helps to strengthen the hip abduction muscles which run along the outside of your hip. So Jennifer is going to start by holding onto something. You can also face directly onto what you're holding onto as well, if that's what you prefer. Technique is really important in this exercise, so we don't want to overcompensate by leaning to one side to help to get the opposite leg up, because that involves other muscles that we aren't trying to train in this exercise. We also want to go nice and slowly and just lift up the foot as much as we can without having to lean to the opposite side. So Jennifer is doing an example of a nice controlled rep with good technique. And now she's going to show you an example of a rep with not so good technique, where she's lifted the leg too far up and she's had to lean to one side. It's just not as effective, and it's not going to train the muscles as well. This next stretch is for the hip flexors, which are the muscle group at the front of your hip, and the quads, which are the big muscle group at the front of your upper leg. I like to have something underneath my knee just to make it a little bit more comfortable. So you're going to come up into a half kneeling position with your knee bent under you, hips pointing straight forward, and then you're going to slowly lean into the stretch. And you should feel the stretch down at the front of your hips. Next, I'm going to show you 2 glute stretches that can be done either as part of a warm-up or a cool-down. So glute tightness is really common, but hopefully you will be able to get some benefit out of these stretches. The first one that I'll show you is going to be lying on your back. So what we're going to do is lie flat on our back. We're going to lift up one knee, and then we're going to lift up the other knee like so. So you're going to see the leg of the glute that you want to stretch is going to be bent with your foot resting on the bottom leg. So the more that you pull your legs back, the more you're going to stretch that glute. This stretch is a hip adductor stretch, which stretches the muscles running along the inside of your leg. So this is just a simple stretch done standing that can be done outdoors with no equipment. What I'm going to do is I'm going to space my legs apart, and then I'm going to bend one knee and slowly lean to the side of the knee that's bent. And you should feel a stretch along the inside of your knee. The more you bend your knee, the more you'll feel the stretch. And the stretch should be significant, but it should never be painful. And then you can swap and come to the other side.